Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are bringing you a really serious analytical look into a situation that, well, it offers a pretty revealing window into the inner workings of modern healthcare management.
Yeah, it really does.
Our mission today is to unpack a highly detailed investigative report from the Dutch news program Nieuwsuur. It focuses on the intensive care unit at Erasmus MC, which is the largest of its kind in the Netherlands.
Right, and the situation there is incredibly layered. We're talking about conflicts that go far beyond your standard workplace disputes. We are looking at fundamental questions about organizational management, medical oversight, and really how institutions handle internal alarms when things go wrong.
Absolutely. Now, before we really delve into the details, I want to establish a clear baseline with you, the listener.
Very important.
We are exploring some highly sensitive, deeply conflicting claims here between hospital staff and hospital management, and we are not taking sides.
No, not at all.
We're not endorsing specific viewpoints, and we aren't making definitive judgments on the individuals involved. Our objective today is strictly to impartially report on and analyze the facts, the allegations, and the institutional responses, exactly as they are presented in the Nieuwsuur source material.
Right. Our role is basically to map out the terrain of this investigation for you. We're tracing the timeline of these allegations and analyzing how the institution's response mechanisms actually functioned when they were put under extreme pressure.
To give you a roadmap of where this conversation is heading, the investigation centers on allegations of a toxic work culture and specific claims of retaliation by the department head, Diederik Gommers.
Yeah.
We will also examine what the report describes as a massive failure in the hospital's internal oversight mechanisms, and critically, how all of this potentially intersects with patient safety.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, given that our listeners understand the baseline intensity of academic ICUs, the focus here is how Erasmus MC's specific status as a referral center for complex cases magnifies the fallout of any communication breakdown.
Right, because this isn't just a standard regional hospital.
Exactly. It is an academic center where the most severe, most complicated cases are sent. In that highly specialized environment, the free flow of information between disciplines isn't just some nice-to-have best practice. It is the structural foundation of the entire care model.
That sets the context perfectly for where this investigation actually begins. The Nieuwsuur report highlights a crucial document from July 2025. This was a report from the National ICU Association in the Netherlands, and it delivered a very firm recommendation to Erasmus MC.
A really unprecedented one, honestly.
The association stated that the functioning of the ICU team, their workload, and their overall safety culture needed to be structurally evaluated. The committee specifically questioned whether internal signals regarding work pressure and leadership were actually being heard by management.
And you have to realize, when a national professional body issues that kind of directive to a specific academic hospital, it indicates that distress signals have breached the internal confines of the department.
It's leaking out.
Right. It suggests a prolonged period where internal feedback loops were either totally ignored or failed entirely, pushing the staff to elevate their concerns to a national level.
The sources trace the origins of those exact distress signals back to the COVID-19 crisis. Diederik Gommers had been the department head of this ICU since 2013, and during the pandemic, he became this prominent national figure in the Netherlands, actively advising the government on TV.
But inside his own department, a significant operational strain was developing.
According to the report, the Erasmus MC ICU was taking on a disproportionately higher number of patients compared to other regional hospitals.
And the nursing staff reported feeling that a critical breaking point had been surpassed. The investigation details how nurses repeatedly communicated that they were at their absolute operational limits.
Just totally burned out.
From their perspective on the floor, the continued intake of patients was viewed as an irresponsible risk to both staff well-being and to patient safety. They reported feeling entirely unheard by leadership, which is a dynamic that resulted in high absenteeism and deep-seated frustration across the whole department.
This dynamic brings a really pivotal figure into the narrative. The report focuses on a whistleblower, identified as Nurse de Juice. She essentially took on the role of advocating for the overwhelmed nursing staff, communicating directly to management that the current operational pace just could not be safely maintained.
And this specific interaction is where the relationship between the staff on the floor and the department leadership allegedly shifts from, just strained to actively punitive.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the timeline of events surrounding Nurse Juju's is a major focal point of the report. Shortly after she formally advocates for the nursing staff, she receives an email from Gommers. Now, he is on vacation at the time, Yet he emails her directly to question her previously agreed-upon study arrangements, suggesting her educational commitments would cause her to be absent from the ward too frequently.
While he's on vacation.
Yes. And just 2 days after that email, she is called into an office, and her study days are officially revoked.
From an organizational psychology standpoint, the proximity of those events is incredibly significant.
It's hard to ignore.
For DeJuice, the revocation of her study days was viewed as direct, unquestionable retaliation for speaking up about department safety. The situation escalated into a formal labor conflict, necessitating legal representation.
Wow.
But beyond her individual case, an incident like this functions as a behavioral deterrent for the entire department.
How so?
When a staff member raises a safety concern and is met with swift administrative friction, it establishes a precedent. It signals to the broader staff that raising concerns carries a very real professional cost.
And the new Sue report provides a very stark illustration of that chilling effect. They feature a quote where one doctor asks a colleague, "Why don't you speak out?" The colleague's response is, "I'm not going to do that. I learned years ago that I have to keep my mouth shut."
That quote encapsulates a profound systemic vulnerability. The source material emphasizes a concept from medical experts that is crucial for us to understand here. They say intensive care medicine is not cookbook medicine.
What exactly does the report mean by that distinction in this context?
It means that in a highly complex academic ICU, there is rarely a single pre-written protocol that covers every cascading failure a patient might experience.
Right.
You cannot simply follow a rigid set of steps from a book when dealing with multi-organ failure or experimental treatments. The optimal path for a patient is often discovered through continuous, rigorous debate among the medical team.
Back and forth.
Exactly. It requires doctors and nurses to constantly second-guess assumptions, propose alternatives, and really challenge each other's clinical reasoning.
So if there's a culture of fear,
If the staff operates in an environment where they are hesitant to speak up, question an order, or highlight a potential risk, that vital debate just ceases to exist. The sources argue that when this collaborative debate dies, it leads directly to sloppy handovers, problematic communication, and an elevated risk of harm to patient care.
that completely reframes the issue. It's not simply a matter of employee dissatisfaction or HR complaints. It's a question of whether a frontline nurse feels secure enough to inform a senior specialist that a critical variable might have been overlooked.
Precisely.
And the investigation points out that this environment wasn't exclusive to the nursing staff. The report details allegations that medical specialists face similar management tactics, and it introduces an internal term that staff actually used for this. They called it the strafkamp, or punishment camp.
The use of that specific terminology inside a highly respected academic medical center points to a deeply entrenched subculture of isolation.
The report grounds this claim by introducing Dr. Han Meter. He is an intensive care specialist whose specific expertise lies in highly complex ventilation techniques. During the peak of the COVID-19 crisis, Dr. Meter led special IC ambulances, a role that the sources indicate created professional friction with Gommers.
The critical data point here is how Dr. Meter was managed upon his return to the standard ICU rotation.
According to the investigation, he was effectively sidelined. He was placed into what colleagues termed the straf camp. The report alleges that Gommers forbade Dr. Meter from entering certain sections of the intensive care unit.
Which is incredible for a senior specialist.
It gets worse. He was explicitly restricted from assisting his colleagues with complex ventilation problems, which is his precise medical subspecialty, even in scenarios where those colleagues actively requested his consultation.
What's fascinating here is the sheer operational risk of deploying that kind of management tactic in an academic hospital.
The risk to the patients.
Yes. The primary function of an institution like Erasmus MC is to serve as the ultimate safety net for regional hospitals. Those smaller hospitals transfer their most critical, complex cases to Rotterdam, specifically so those patients can be treated by highly specialized experts like Dr. Meter.
Right.
By intentionally walling off a ventilation expert and preventing him from consulting on the very patients who require his specific knowledge, the management structure is actively degrading the level of care those patients receive.
It's like you're actively hoping they make mistakes. And the investigation suggests this was not an isolated clash of personalities with a single doctor. NUSER uncovered a documented pattern of specialists being moved or sidelined.
A clear pattern.
Between 2017 and 2021, the report notes that at least 3 doctors were transferred out of the department by Gommers.
The sources also detail an incident from 2018 that highlights the downstream effects of these staffing decisions. 4 nurses working on the thorax IC, which is a highly specialized unit dealing with complex heart and lung cases, emailed Gommers directly.
What did they want to know?
They were seeking an explanation as to why a particular doctor, who did not normally practice within their specific, highly technical subspecialty, was suddenly and permanently scheduled on their unit.
The medical experts interviewed by NewsER analyzed that specific staffing choice very critically. They argue that placing a doctor in a highly specialized unit that falls outside their core area of expertise fundamentally compromises safety.
It does.
From a clinical perspective, it is viewed as setting the practitioner up for failure, introducing an unnecessary variable of risk to patient care.
So you have a scenario where specialized doctors are sidelined and other doctors are placed in units outside their primary expertise. From a structural standpoint, the immediate question is how an institution justifies that level of operational risk, and why the hospital's internal oversight mechanisms didn't immediately intervene.
That brings us exactly to how the staff attempted to utilize those oversight mechanisms. The hospital employs an internal ombudsman. This is a position designed specifically to advise the board of directors on matters of social safety and to prevent undesirable workplace behavior.
The safety valve of the hospital.
Right. And the NewsStar investigation verified that at least 4 different employees approached this ombudsman to formally report the deteriorating atmosphere and management tactics on the ICU.
The Ombudsman's response to those reports provides a very clear look at how internal bureaucratic bottlenecks function.
The internal documents show a deeply concerning interaction. One employee detailed the specific intimidation tactics to the Ombudsman, and the Ombudsman's documented reply was, "I've heard this more, and I begin to see a pattern."
That is a critical admission. The internal safety officer explicitly acknowledges a pattern of intimidation within the largest ICU in the country.
Yet, the record shows that despite recognizing this pattern, the Ombudsman initiated no formal investigation whatsoever.
None.
Furthermore, the hospital's board of directors was not informed of the developing situation. The internal reporting system, designed to act as an early warning mechanism, effectively functioned as a dead end.
When official internal channels acknowledge a problem but refuse to escalate it, it forces employees who are concerned about safety into a very precarious position. They basically have to look for leverage outside the standard chain of command.
And that is precisely the route Nurse DeJuice took. Realizing the internal systems were completely stalled, she filed a formal colloquially report.
A whistleblower report.
Yes, a legally protected whistleblower complaint under Dutch law. Her objective was to legally compel the hospital to investigate not only the work culture within the ICU, but also the potential complicity of the hospital board itself. She alleged they had been aware of these systemic issues for years without taking action.
The board's response to this legal compulsion is honestly a masterclass in institutional maneuvering.
It really is.
Forced to investigate by the whistleblower complaint, they bypass medical oversight bodies and instead hire a commercial advisory firm to conduct the culture probe.
When looking at the methodology of that commercial firm's investigation, the most glaring data point isn't who they talked to, but who they ignored.
This part is astounding.
Out of the 15 to 20 interviews conducted with medical specialists, the sources confirmed that not a single nurse was included in the process. 0 nurses.
This is a classic example of bureaucratic blind spotting. It's where an institution designs an investigation's parameters specifically to avoid the exact demographic most likely to hold the uncomfortable truths.
The report features Job Groeneweg, a professor of safety and healthcare, who categorizes this exclusion as a fundamental methodological failure.
And he's right. In any healthcare setting worldwide, it is a universally acknowledged standard that the nursing staff possesses the most accurate, real-time data regarding ward safety and culture.
They're at the bedside constantly.
Conducting a safety culture investigation without interviewing the frontline nurses means the resulting report is inherently incomplete.
But the limitations of the report were actually stated by the authors themselves. In the foundational documents of the investigation, the commercial advisory firm explicitly stated in writing that they did not possess the necessary medical knowledge to evaluate whether patient safety was actually being compromised.
So they place a massive explicit disclaimer on their own work, clearly stating their inability to judge clinical safety metrics.
Correct. But the hospital board's application of that report is where the narrative shifts. Despite the commercial firm's self-professed lack of medical expertise, and despite the total exclusion of the nursing staff, the hospital board utilized that exact document to publicly conclude that there were no abuses within the department and that patient safety had never been at risk.
It's wild.
To resolve the extensive systemic issues raised in the legally protected whistleblower complaint, the board's official solution was to offer the ICU staff a coaching course.
A coaching course?
Coaching course. And regarding the whistleblower's specific demand that the board's own complicity and inaction be investigated, how did they handle that?
The board implemented a highly conditional approach. They stated they would only investigate their own role if the initial inquiry found definitive proof of a problem.
Ah, I see. Because they utilized the flawed commercial report to conclude that no problem existed, they subsequently decided there was no requirement to investigate their own oversight failures.
It is a textbook example of circular logic deployed for organizational self-preservation. By controlling the parameters of the investigation, they effectively neutralize the whistleblower's core claims without ever engaging with the root causes of the dysfunction.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the investigation then shifts to examine how institutional rules are applied, uncovering what appears to be a massive disparity.
Rule bending for the higher-ups.
Exactly. The NewsSir journalist uncovered a procedural anomaly regarding Diederik Gommers himself. As the head of a university hospital department, he routinely participates in clinical research involving patients. However, the National Umbrella Organization for University Hospitals maintains a strict mandate. Any professional conducting this type of patient-facing clinical research must hold a specific certification known as a BOR certification.
To contextualize that for you, a BLCO certification isn't merely a bureaucratic formality. It is a foundational, procedural, and ethical safeguard. It's designed to ensure that clinical trials on human subjects adhere to strict legal and safety standards.
When the journalists searched the National Register, Gommers was not listed. He lacked this mandatory certification.
Wow.
Upon being confronted with this data, the hospital formally admitted he did not possess the credential. They issued a statement saying he has started a course to obtain it.
Only after being asked by journalists.
Yes. However, the hospital board explicitly refused to disclose to the journalists how many clinical studies Gommers had participated in or led involving patients without holding the legally required certification.
The contrast drawn by the sources here is sharp. You have an environment where a nurse faces the immediate revocation of her study days for raising safety concerns, while the department head conducts clinical research without mandatory ethical certifications and receives protective obfuscation from the hospital board.
It points to a hierarchy where the enforcement of rules is highly dependent on an individual's status within the institution.
It absolutely does.
The protective posture of the institution also seems to coincide with immediate actions taken against those who speak to the press. The report documents the real-time fallout of the NewsSir investigation itself. Dr. Meter, the ventilation expert we discussed earlier, provided an on-camera interview to the journalists.
Brave move.
According to the timeline, Gommers had declined to answer any calls from the journalists for an entire month. Yet, immediately after Dr. Meter's interview took place, Gommers sent Dr. Meter an email, formally accusing him of breaching his employment contract by speaking publicly.
That reaction serves as a real-time demonstration of the exact punitive dynamics the whistleblowers were attempting to expose. It highlights the immense professional and emotional capital required to challenge an established medical hierarchy.
And the investigation spends time detailing that human cost. The whistleblowers interviewed expressed that coming forward felt akin to committing professional suicide.
Such a heavy phrase.
They operated under the assumption that speaking out would likely result in being permanently sidelined or terminated. They articulated that they had exhausted all personal interest in the conflict. Their motivation to escalate the issue stemmed purely from a fundamental concern for patient safety and the long-term viability of the intensive care department.
They were trying to save the unit.
They described watching skilled colleagues experience burnout and resign, feeling a moral imperative to trigger a broader alarm regardless of the consequences to their own careers.
Which brings us to the current landscape of this conflict. You have a deeply entrenched internal dispute that has now breached the walls of the hospital.
The current status of the situation involves external intervention. The National Health Inspectorate, which is an independent government regulatory body, has formally stepped in.
Timely.
Based on the accumulation of reports and whistleblower testimonies, they are actively conducting their own investigation into the work culture and safety protocols at the Erasmus MC Intensive Care Unit.
And the board.
In stark contrast, the Erasmus MC Hospital Board maintains a position of absolute denial. They state unequivocally that patient safety is fully guaranteed. that the care provided meets all stringent national standards, and they firmly reject the assertion that any systemic irregularities have occurred under their oversight.
So the narrative presents an immovable object, the hospital board's insistence on institutional integrity, facing an unstoppable force of compounding whistleblower testimonies and external regulatory scrutiny.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? To synthesize the findings of the new SIR report, we have examined a thoroughly documented timeline of distress from frontline healthcare professionals. They outline a workplace defined by a culture of fear, the strategic isolation of highly specialized medical experts, and an administrative environment where highlighting safety risks results in professional penalization.
And set against this is the hospital board's reliance on a commercially produced, methodologically limited investigation to dismiss these claims and avoid self-examination.
Right. While the institution continues to project an image of absolute safety, the sheer volume of suppressed voices, the inaction of the internal ombudsman, and the necessary intervention of the National Health Inspectorate paint a highly complex, deeply concerning picture of how modern medical institutions manage internal crises.
This raises an important question, one that extends far beyond the walls of this specific hospital. If the very mechanisms designed to protect patients and staff, like an ombudsman and internal investigations, can be used instead to protect the institution's reputation, how can we ever truly measure the safety of the hospitals we rely on when we are at our most vulnerable?
That is the ultimate question to consider. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We will see you next time.